Hey people, what's going on? Jelani, Hashim, Bracey, CEO of a favorite nonprofit, Black to Life. I want to apologize for the lateness of this video. Had a little technical difficulties, but tonight is reading night, and hope you enjoy the story tonight. We will be reading Counting on Katherine by Helaine Becker and illustrated by Darrell Famurick. And Counting on Katherine is how Katherine Johnson saved Apollo 13. Apollo 13 was a space shuttle that went to the moon back in the 60s. So Katherine Johnson was one of the NASA mathematicians that helped to do that. And it was a groundbreaking event because she was a black woman. And back then, as in now, there was a lot of racism, prejudice, and racial discrimination that she had to overcome. And this is a story of how she did that and became a groundbreaking and trailblazing person of history that we should celebrate. So this is Counting on Katherine, how Katherine Johnson saved Apollo 13. Okay. Katherine loved to count. She counted the steps to the road, the steps to the church, the number of dishes and spoons she washed in the bright white sink. So as you can see, Katherine loves to count. The only thing she didn't count were the stars in the sky. Only a fool she thought would try that. Even so, the stars sparkled her imagination. What was out there? Katherine yearned to know as much as she could about numbers, about the universe, about everything. See, Katherine was a very inquisitive child, and she was into numbers. So the stars and numbers seem to intrigue young Katherine. So let's see where this journey is going to take her next. Katherine's boundless curiosity turned her into a star student. She was so bright, she skipped 3 whole grades. She catapulted right past her brother. He wasn't too happy about that. Wow. She was breaking records back then. Skipping 3 whole grades, man. That's an amazing feat. By the time she turned 10, she was ready for high school. High school, y'all. 10 years old. But back then, America was legally segregated by race. Her town's high school didn't admit black students of any age. Katherine burned with fury. She wanted more than anything to keep learning. There was still so much to know. So even though America's desire for her was not for her to learn, she had the burning desire in herself to get it by any means. And we face that today as a people. America still has a problem with accepting black people as they are. And we still have to fight with fury to get what we want. Count on me, Katherine's father told her. By working night and day, he earned enough money to move the family to a town with a black high school. See, where there's a will, there's a way. So the father, knowing in the town that they were in, there weren't any black students, even though she was smart, 10 years old, ready to go to high school. She was very capable of the work. But back then, there was no room for her in that high school because of her skin color. So her dad worked hard and was able to move her to a black high school. Katherine loved high school. She was good at every subject, but math was still her favorite. She dreamed of becoming a research mathematician, making discoveries about the number patterns that are the foundations of our universe. In those days, though, there were no jobs as research mathematicians for women. Professions most available to them were teaching and nursing. So Katherine became an elementary school teacher. She liked her job and she loved her students, but she never stopped dreaming about exploring numbers. So as you see, even as a great student, Katherine faced another stumbling block, not on her own, but one that was set before her by this society, and that was being black and being a black woman. Even though she qualified and was able to do the job and was very capable, she was still not allowed because of the color of her skin and because she was a woman. In the 1950s, the U.S. government's National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, NACA, hired thousands of new employees. It even started hiring black women as mathematicians. Katherine heard about the mathematician jobs. Her heart raced with excitement. Perhaps her dream would come true after all. But when she applied for one of the positions, she was told they were already filled. Katherine had to wait a whole year until new spots opened up. Her patience paid off. She got the job. So she was qualified. First of all, she had to take a job as a teacher. And she was a great teacher. She did her thing. But she always still had that burning desire. People out there, just kids and grown people alike, man, no matter what you're doing right now, whatever your passion is burning inside, man, you keep that. And you keep working on that. But while you got to pay the bills, you got to get a job. So that's what Katherine did. She went and got a job as a teacher. And she still had to wait another year for the mathematician job that she really wanted. So she was very patient. And she persevered through a lot. So let's see what's going on next for her. A few years later, it's after Katherine had the job. A few years later, the Soviet Union sent a rocket ship into space, launching space race with the United States. Hold on, let me read that again. My bad. A few years later, the Soviet Union sent a rocket ship into space, launching a space race with the United States. NACA was rolled into a new space agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. Katherine now found herself at the heart of America's space program. She worked as a computer. Quotes. Electronic computers were not widely used yet. Calculating long series of numbers. So basically her mind was calculating numbers at the speed or like a computer. So that's why they call her a computer. They were given the tasks that men thought were boring and unimportant. So it seemed like the lady mathematicians were given the jobs that the men, I guess, they thought were boring. That didn't bother Katherine. She knew that without her contributions, a spaceship couldn't reach its destination nor safely return to Earth. All about longitude and latitude, launch coordinates. Those are numbers. So yeah, you got to know something about numbers to launch and to get back. And here's why. Sending a rocket ship into space is like throwing a ball into the air. At first, the force of the throw sends the ball up. But as its energy runs out, the ball's path curves back toward the ground where it lands. Where it lands depends on what angle it was thrown and how high and how fast it flew. Because math is a kind of language, Katherine could ask those questions. How high would the rocket ship go and how fast would it travel? Using numbers. And numbers will provide, the all-important answer. Where would it land? To find out, Katherine plotted the numbers she calculated on a graph. When she joined the points together, they formed a curved line. At one end of that line was Earth at the time the rocket ship launched. At the other was where Earth would be when the ship landed. So she was calculating, as well as the rocket ship leaving Earth, she had to calculate where it left from Earth and then had to calculate where it would land on Earth. Now, some people might think it'll be landing in the same spot, right? Why not go to the same spot? Well, the Earth is known to spin on its axis. So while the Apollo 13 has left one day, they have to come back another day. So as the Earth has spun, I guess she has to find out where. Oh yeah, you can see the Earth's. You can see right there. That's the Earth revolution. So, or the Earth's rotation. Yeah, revolution's around the sun. This is the Earth's rotation. So yeah, she got to find out where the Earth will be when the Apollo 13 is scheduled for liftoff and landing. Katherine's reputation for accuracy and strong leadership skills, she was known for asking plenty of questions, got her promoted to Project Mercury, a new program designed to send the first American astronauts into space. Just wanted to stop and say, hey, man, all those out there, don't ever be afraid to ask a question. If you don't know what's going on, you need to ask questions. You don't want to be in a conversation where you don't know what's going on, because then that's not a conversation. You're just getting talked to. So make sure if you don't know what's going on, ask questions, as she did. Mercury's missions were going to be dangerous. So dangerous that even the project's star astronaut, John Glenn, refused to fly unless Katherine okayed the numbers. So we got the star astronaut of NASA refusing to fly because he had that much faith in Katherine. That much faith. You can count on me, she said. Glenn's spacecraft, Friendship 7, orbited Earth 3 times and returned home safely. Glenn became a national hero. Here you go. Got Katherine doing the coordinates. Got Glenn out here getting out there safely because of Katherine. Katherine was promoted again. I'm not skipping that. Okay, no. Katherine was promoted again. Now she was asked to calculate the flight paths for Project Apollo, the first flights to the moon. Count on me, she said. On July 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts walked on the moon. Their feat was celebrated around the world. Not their actual feat, but the accomplishment they made. More triumphs followed. Apollo 12 rocketed to the moon in November of 1969. So there you go. So she got Apollo 11. She got Apollo 12. She rocking and rolling. Apollo 13 launched on April 11th, 1970. But on the third day of Apollo 13's flight, the worst thing happened. An explosion in space. Could the crippled spaceship make it to the moon? And if it didn't, would it be able to get back home to Earth? The 3 astronauts on board were in grave peril. Commander Jim Lovell told Mission Control, Houston, we have a problem. Man. So they got a little dilemma up here, man. A little explosion in space. Well, a big explosion in space, and trying to see if the spacecraft can make it either to the moon or back to Earth. Right now, they just in limbo, so we're finna see what's finna happen. So back on Earth, Katherine Johnson got a phone call. Her flight path calculation would have to be done all over again, and perfectly. It would be the toughest challenge of her life. Katherine told Mission Control, you can count on me. She rolled up her sleeves, took a deep breath, and began doing the math. So her flight path calculations had to be recalculated because of the unforeseen circumstance of this spacecraft having an explosion. So wasn't nothing that she did wrong. It was just the explosion that happened. Now she has to recalculate because, usually you don't count for stuff like that. Nobody expects any explosions to happen. So she worked hard and fast. A few hours later, Katherine's calculations were finished. The flight path to return home would take this ship around the far side of the moon. From there, the moon's gravity would act like a slingshot to zing the ship back to Earth. To get home, the crew of Apollo 13 would have to follow Katherine's course exactly by burning off fuel at precise intervals. If the astronauts made a mistake, their ship would drift through space forever. So if they don't follow her, first of all, she had to come up with the master plan to get these people back to the crib. First of all, she had to come up with what they say, a few hours? A few hours later. Now, a few is 3 or more, so we don't know how long that took. But still, she got together a flight plan to bring back a busted up space shuttle from space to bring it back to Earth. And these cats got to follow her directions exactly. So it's a lot of pressure going on right here. A lot of pressure, but we're going to see what's going to happen. Pressure either bust pipes or makes diamonds. We're going to see what's up. Katherine waited anxiously to hear the astronauts report. Finally, it crackled over the loudspeakers. We've got it. Apollo 13 was back on track. And the crowd goes wild. Katherine Johnson had done it. She brought Apollo 13 home. She was no longer the kid who dreamed of what lay beyond the stars. She was now a star herself. So from all that dreaming she did, from all that preparation, from all that patience, for all that hard work and dedication, she goes down in history as one of the most important people in the space program, in the history of the space program in the United States, and pivotal in so many of this country's accomplishments in space. So they got a little more about Katherine in the back, and I'm going to read this and then show you a little picture of her. They say Katherine Johnson was born on August 26, 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. Her mother was a teacher. Katherine assumed she'd grow up to be a teacher too. From her youngest days, it was clear to everyone that Katherine was extremely bright. When she officially started school, she went straight into 2nd grade. Later, she skipped grade 5. Katherine graduated from high school at 14 and West Virginia State College at 18. Her first job was teaching math in Marion, Virginia. She loved helping her students learn and encouraged them to learn from one another. I had my students find a buddy and help each other, she said. In 1953, Katherine got a job as a computer at the Langley Aeronautical Laboratory for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. That was NACA, which later became NASA. To counter ingrained sexism there, she had to develop more than math skills. We needed to be assertive as women in those days. Assertive and aggressive, she said. Still, Katherine was kept out of research teams' all-male briefings. Eventually, they got tired of answering all my questions and just let me in. Spurred by competition with the Soviet Union, the United States ramped up its own space program in 1958, and Katherine became an aerospace technologist when her team joined NASA. By the late 1960s, NASA estimates more than 400,000 people were working on sending a man to the moon. Katherine says the whole idea of going into space was new and daring. There were no textbooks. We had to write them. We wrote the first textbook by hand, she said. Katherine did her calculations on mechanical tabulating machines. By 1961, electronic computers were coming into wider use, but many people, including John Glenn, which was the all-star astronaut, didn't trust the computer-generated numbers. Call Katherine, she remembers him saying. If she says the number is right, I'll take it. So this dude, John Glenn, which is the superstar back in the day of NASA as astronauts, said, call Katherine, man. If you give me a number on the computer, I need her to tell me that it's right. That's how much faith they had in her, well, he had in her, because she earned it. Like, she put in the work. They seen her work, and they knew how good she was. So, I mean, they called her a computer. You know, so that in itself is amazing, that her mind could calculate our numbers like that. Her role, however, always involved more than mere number crunching. It relied heavily on hunches. By letting her imagination run free, Katherine developed a key backup navigation system that used the stars as guideposts. So she out here making a navigation system out of the stars. The first GPS, she out here using the stars. That's what's up. Katherine's contributions were crucial to America's space program. She calculated the trajectory for Alan Shepard's first flight into space and devised the trajectories for space capsules and lunar landing modules. She co-authored 26 scientific papers, including a groundbreaking report on the theoretical underpinnings of spaceflight. Later in her career, she worked on the space shuttle and on a satellite project that searched the globe for underground minerals and other natural resources from space. In 2015, Katherine received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Despite her many achievements, Katherine never liked to take any credit. Her reason? Because we always worked as a team, she says. It was never just one person. That's just a little picture, a little cartoon picture of her at the bottom and her little bio, man. An amazing woman, an amazing story, and that's the end. I want to thank y'all for joining me for another reading night with Black to Life. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next Wednesday at this same time on Facebook Live. We'll see you then. Thanks.